Has the ball, down by 2. There's the switch. Gobert is out there. Doncic maneuvers.
Pause. Now I know we've all seen this play. Luka Doncic toying with Rudy Gobert. 4-time DPOY Rudy Gobert. But I think it's time we finally have a conversation. Is Rudy Gobert actually that bad? Right, so first things first, we need to talk about Rudy Gobert. It's the middle of the night right now. Right now it is 10:45. Damn, I need to sleep. I got work tomorrow. But I feel like I've been seeing so much conversation, so much discourse. I even saw a video of Shaq talking about Rudy Gobert the other day, calling him and Ben Simmons bums. And I think it's finally time we have the discourse regarding Rudy Gobert. Now, we saw Rudy Gobert up against the Dallas Mavericks in the conference finals last year? I believe it was the conference finals last year. And we saw him get toyed with constantly and be a matchup nightmare in a bad way. Now, first, let's display all the accolades we know about Rudy Gobert. We know Rudy Gobert is a 4-time All-NBA player. He's a 7-time All-Defensive team. He's a staple in that All-Defensive first team. You see him again and again and again. And he's a 4-time, not one, not 2, not 3, a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. Now, what comes with that is people say the discourse around Rudy Gobert becomes he's overrated. He's one of the most overrated players of all time. I disagree. Rudy Gobert, he is a schematic problem in a sense for certain teams. For example, we saw the French national team this year. We saw them decide to stick Rudy Gobert on the bench. But when they needed a stop, I remind you, Rudy Gobert is on the court. Now, it becomes a bit more difficult for Rudy Gobert in the playoffs. We saw him go the furthest he's ever gone this season with that conference finals appearance this year. But the issue that he faced was, in the playoffs, it becomes a lot more one-on-one basketball. To its core, towards the end of games. Towards the end of games, you see less plays and more superhero performances. We've seen that a lot this season. We saw a lot of Kyrie superhero performances. We saw a lot of Luka superhero performances. We saw a lot of Anthony Edwards on the other side performances superhero-wise. But when it becomes like that, it becomes a one-on-one matchup. And a team like the Dallas Mavericks will look at a player like Rudy Gobert, 7'2". I remind you, Rudy Gobert is 7'2". He should not be able to cut the perimeter at all. It's not normal for him to be able to guard the perimeter. It's not a normal thing at all. But he's an okay perimeter defender. Whilst that one play makes it seem like he's playing against Luka Doncic, one of the best one-on-one players probably we've ever seen. Luka Doncic plays around with him for a bit and eventually hits the dagger on his head top. But Rudy Gobert should not be able to perform on the perimeter anyway. The issue with him is there's less switchability in the playoffs. That's why a lot of teams are looking at big wings, are looking at a lot of 3-and-D players that can guard the perimeter. They're switching a lot less in the playoffs. We've seen it quite a bit. We've seen players that have the ability to switch thrive in the playoffs. Players like Bam Adebayo, players like Drew Holiday, players that can guard multiple positions. Although Drew Holiday has had some of the biggest choke games I've seen in playoffs, as in from a shooting perspective, I've seen him perform terribly. You have to have him on that floor because he is a matchup problem for the opposition. Whereas Rudy Gobert, matchup wise, as he's 7'2", it's a lot more difficult for him to guard, on the perimeter. My thing with him is, for me to be able to put him in the upper echelon conversations, he needs to do more. You see, we look at him and we ask, is Rudy Gobert a Hall of Famer? Yes he is. He's a Hall of Famer. There's a lot of bums in the Hall of Fame. I don't know any. There's going to be a lot of great players in the Hall of Fame, like John Wall. But Rudy Gobert has to make that Hall of Fame solely because he's a 4-time DPOY winner. He's got 4 All-NBAs, for God's sake. That should be slightly enough. Add the 4 All-NBAs to 4 DPOYs. He has to make the Hall of Fame. If he doesn't make the Hall of Fame, I'd be mightily shocked. you ask yourself, where does he rank amongst the defensive players? On a defensive capability standpoint, he's right up there. I'd beg to argue whether he was better than Draymond Green. I know Draymond Green seems to think that Rudy Gobert is a scrub and a bum, but Rudy Gobert, Draymond Green, you just seem to hate foreigners. Draymond Green, in his own right, as a passer, fantastic, absolutely amazing. From a schematic perspective for that Golden State Warriors, he was a linchpin, sure. But from a defensive perspective, I've seen Rudy Gobert be a rim deterrent, affect teams' ability to score way more than I've seen Draymond Green's one-on-one matchup defending. And I know he has a great IQ, but Rudy Gobert's IQ is fantastic as well. We've seen him be able to take over a double team. Be able to dictate when to use a double team. We've seen him. His rim presence is absolutely ungodly. Ungodly doesn't make any sense. It's absolutely godly. The only person I've seen come close to that is a player like Victor Wembanyama. So we ask ourselves, how good is he as a player amongst the defensive greats? The issues we have now, Dikembe Mutombo has reached an NBA Finals. Ben Wallace is an NBA champion. Draymond Green is a 4-time NBA champion. Scottie Pippen is a 6-time NBA champion. These are some of the greatest defensive players we've ever seen. And they've been able to do it within the playoffs. They've been able to perform at the highest level when the stakes are the highest. And I know people say defense is different in the playoffs, but it's still defense. And so if I want to see Rudy Gobert be amongst those conversations, if he wants to be among the upper echelons within NBA history as one of the great centers we've seen in the modern era, you have to progress. And the problem with Rudy Gobert is he's going to rely upon Anthony Edwards to progress. The players, like I said, Dikembe Mutombo, provided that desperately needed defense on that 76ers team. He was a great defensive player in the Atlanta Hawks, Denver Nuggets. We know what Dikembe Mutombo does. That Detroit Pistons team with Ben Wallace is one of the best defensive teams ever. That Chicago Bulls is the only team to be the highest in offensive rating and defensive rating due to players like Scottie Pippen. Draymond Green, we don't need to talk about what Draymond Green brings in terms of defense for the Golden State Warriors. When they have colossal, great offensive player, he is that equalizer, that additional piece that allows the Golden State Warriors to flourish so well on offense because his schematic defense and his one-on-one matchup defense is truly fantastic. I think Bam Adebayo will be in that conversation soon, but Bam Adebayo has 2 finals appearances. Rudy Gobert, you can put your medals on the table, your DPOIs on the table, but when we talk about what really counts, you've got nothing, mate. So for me, Rudy Gobert, bona fide Hall of Famer. But is Rudy Gobert right now amongst the elite in defensive capabilities? Maybe. But is he one of the best players who is a defensive great? Now that one's still up in the air. Don't forget to subscribe. Boom.